Good evening, everyone. Welcome to day three of D for Drones. As we said yesterday, we want A for apple, B for ball, C for cow, and D for drones. And that is the whole aim and mission of this Project Wings that we are about to carry out with the help of Electronic Sector Skills Council of India. And we have had two amazing days, day before yesterday and yesterday, where we spoke about the why of this entire project. Why do we need to have drones for children, and why should the children be learning drones, and what does the future look like for them? And yesterday we discussed about how do we create a mini ecosystem of drones in schools, of drone education in the schools, and how do we bring electronics and avionics and the practice sessions? And we also discussed about how do we make it happen? How do we make the educators a part of the whole design program? So today we will be talking about how to fly drones safely, ethically, and responsibly in the schools, and how to make this a part of the behavior of the school children early on. And we will also be discussing about the safety aspects, of course, and we want children to feel safe while they're tinkering with drones. So tinkering means that you give them a space to try, to fail, to crash, and still it should be okay. So remember when we were kids, when the computers were first in our school, we used to feel that the computer lab is like out of the world. It's like a temple. And where we used to go, and we used to always be warned that don't touch that, don't touch this, and you have just done something bad with this. And I remember once my brother, I don't know how, but deleted the recycle bin in his computer lab. So we used to be so scared of even doing anything wrong with the computer. But you know what? The fear of technology prevents you from taking the technology ahead. In fact, fear of anything in life. We want children to experience drones and not feel afraid of them. Today we'll be discussing this in details with our panel of speakers. And today, to begin our talk, we will be having Natalie from She Maps, and she is one of the key educators with She Maps. She Maps is an organization in Australia which has been using drones for education and schools for the last many years, and she'll be telling us about her journey. And we have Captain Regis Job again from yesterday, who will be talking to us about the safety aspects of drones and why is it important to think about safety and security in the aspect of drones. And then we have Nick Vignesh from World Economic Forum. So he will be talking to us about the emerging technologies and the world 10 years down the line. So World Economic Forum has coined the world with the word emerging technologies. So we'll understand from him that what does the world of emerging technologies looks like, and what should we expect 10 years down the line, and how do we prepare our children for the future a decade later, but starting today. So let's start our session today. To begin our session, we have Natalie. Natalie, I would request you to please unmute yourself and start your video and your presentation.
Hi, can you see me and hear me okay?
Yes, we can see you, Natalie.
Yep, okay. And can you see my presentation now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay, great. Hi, Richie, thank you so much for having me. My name is Natalie, and I work as an instructor at the education company called She Maps, which is based in Australia. We teach drone-based courses in Australia, but also globally. And tonight I'm here to discuss a little bit about how we make it safe for kids to fail when teaching with drones. But I also just want to quickly point out that I think it's really important that we're teaching our children that it's always safe to fail, and that failing is actually just a really important part of the problem-solving process. So I'm going to share a little bit about my experience teaching with drones over the past couple of years in schools, and how we give children the space to explore and feel comfortable using them. So at She Maps, as I said, we run education programs in schools, which are about 2.5 hours long. And I have a quick video here to show you a little bit about what we do throughout the day. So we have the students work in groups to complete an overarching challenge that we set for them. And we do that by splitting it up into multiple different learning stages. So the program, we look at it as having 4 main learning stages, the start of which is the mission briefing. So we always start our day giving a presentation which talks about what drones are, the lots of different uses for drones in the industry, and then we set them their overall challenge for the day, which is looking at these wonderful image maps that you can see on the ground in this picture. We call this our town of Meadsville, and we tell them that there's been a flood in Meadsville and that their challenge for the day, they've got a drone and they're on the scene, and they have to fly an aerial survey to be able to tell us what's happened with that flood. So we establish that challenge, that problem from the very start of the day. And then we break it up into different learning stages. We don't just give it to them and let them go by themselves. We help them get comfortable with that by building them up slowly throughout the day. So the first aspect of this is the safety check. With the safety check, we tell them that it's what certified drone pilots do, so that they know in the real world the professionals are doing the exact same thing that they're doing on the day. And so it gives them that confidence and it makes them feel connected to the professionals in the industry. Now we fly with mini drones, and we do that deliberately because they're relatively cheap and they're very sturdy. They're a bit like Lego, like if something comes off it, you can usually just clip it back on. And I make a point usually of explicitly telling the students that it is okay if they crash and that the drones won't break. Obviously, this depends what type of drones you're using. If you're using something bigger and more expensive like a DJI Phantom, I would not be telling the students this. But we use mini drones specifically because it is okay if you crash. And this takes the pressure off and it helps students build confidence. And we make sure that we have special safety measures in place so that if they do crash, the drone is not going to be anywhere near the students and there won't be any accidents. So the next part of our day is that we will do the manual flight training. So students are actually able to fly the drone themselves. And our key tip for this is, again, to break it down into a number of steps. So rather than just putting a controller in their hands and telling them to go for it, which can be quite overwhelming for students if they're worried about crashing, we provide steps. So first, we only let them fly with their right thumb. And we get them to fly in a box pattern. And then once we've mastered that, we get them to move on and fly with both their right and left thumb. And you can see their confidence increase. And by the end of it, they're doing flips and they're perfecting their landings. So we've taken something that can be quite scary to students and we've broken it down step by step so that it's not as daunting for them. And then finally, our last part of the day is that we teach an automated flight or a coded flight. And this is where we go back to that mission that we were flying, that we set for them in the beginning with these image maps. We tell them there's been a flood and they need to fly an aerial survey. And that's basically all that we tell them. So this is really the space where we let them get creative. And all of the questions start coming in. They'll ask, what path do we use? Where do we start? Do we have to land in the same place that we start? And here is where the really key part of my job comes in which I pretend that I don't know anything. I act dumb, basically. I respond to every single question with another question. Where do you think you should start? What do you think would be a good flight plan? Why might that be? Is that something you can test? And at first, all of the students will roll their eyes and they think that I'm being really unhelpful. But then they'll go and do it themselves. They'll actually do it without my help and me giving them every little bit of detail. And that's because they've been working up to this problem the entire day through the safety and the hand-by-hand manual flight. And so now it's their opportunity to show their creativity and show what they can do. So I play dumb and I make it a point to tell them that there's no correct answer. Because if you tell students exactly how they should do something and that there's only one correct answer, it really stifles their creativity. And to me, the most important thing is just that they're really engaged and they want to learn. And so we do that by establishing that context right at the beginning, by setting the scene. And so we'll use real world examples. So in Australia, we'll talk about how drones are being used on the Great Barrier Reef, because that's something that everyone can relate to and they get really excited about it. And then we also, this is a great image because it shows them, this is a photo of all of the industries in the world in 2019 that are using drones. And that makes them really excited because they want to be a part of that. And so it's really important to establish that context early on to make them really interested in participating with the rest of the day. And so these are my key takeaway points for how we try and make it safe for kids to fail. We provide them a really broad challenge with no single correct answer. We make sure that they know that there is no one way to do it. They can be as creative as they want. And we break it down into smaller segments, and so that their confidence is built up throughout the day and they feel like they have the skills to then go and do that big challenge that we've set them. And just in terms of the language that you're using, open-ended questions are really key because it gets them thinking and it makes them rely on themselves. And using really encouraging language throughout the day as well, making sure that they know that none of their ideas are stupid and everything can work if they know how to tinker with it. So yeah, those are my kind of takeaways from what I've learned over the few years of working with children and drones. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you so much. That was such an amazing one. And I remember the experience that She Maps had given me when we had done a project in Philippines with the tribal children there. And it is really amazing. You see the excitement early on when you remove this fear of failing from the children's mind. So even the children who have never ever touched a smartphone in their life are able to fly drones so effectively. So thank you so much, Natalie, for this presentation. And now we have Captain Regis Job, who would be telling us why safety and security is such a big deal in drones and why should children be so careful about it. Captain Regis, over to you.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you once again for having me. As Ruchi had mentioned, we'll be talking about safety today, and it's of utmost importance. Thank you so much, Natalie. That was extremely inspiring. Actually, I was quite gobsmacked when you mentioned about using the maps on the ground to train the pilots how to use the drones, because that's one method that we use in the defense also. And we were just discussing that yesterday with Dr. Ruchi. It's a very practical method and a wonderful way to introduce them into surveillance. Now, back to topic. What is safety? Why do we have to implement safety when it comes to drones? Well, to start off with, drones are an amazing tool, especially when it comes to STEM education. However, the same way like plastics, if used wisely, they're good for us. If not, it's disastrous. Now, drones, you need to see, are complex mechanical devices which also have a weight. Now, even at 250 grams, that is the category which you do not need to register. If you were to have a bird that's at 250 grams, and if they were to go into the nacelle or the air inlet of an engine, bring down a plane. That's just the most disastrous scenario. However, there are other things to do consider. Would you go over a nest of baby birds? You'd be destroying that. Would you go to see, if you're curious, what your neighbor is doing? That would be an invasion of privacy. And would you go across to a window and try to drop something? Again, you'd be breaking laws. Now, if laws are there, does that not restrict the industry? The answer is no. It helps to regulate the industry, and regulation helps the industry grow. Remember, at the end of the day, we are training these people of the next generation to be the pilots of the future. And we're not talking small toy drones there. We're talking about drones that could probably already are over 5,700 kilos in weight. And you're introducing them to the active aviation ecospace system. And they're not flying in silos. They need to interact with that aviation ecosphere, number one. Number two, need to fly responsibly, knowledgeably, and legally within that system. As Natalie said, we're training them from the young age, and rightfully so. It's where they start that they get their foundation. And safety is of paramount importance when it comes to that foundation. With that, I just have a small little presentation to do, and we'll move on from there. So I'll just start presenting. In the meantime, just a sec. Does everybody have the slideshow on?
Yes, Captain.
The entire slideshow?
We are staging, yes. Perfect.
Okay. Safe operations of drones. Safety first. Just remember, when you fly an unmanned aircraft or drone, you cannot use the excuse, I did not know, or I was unaware. Before you fly, you need to be aware, and you need to know the rules, regulations, and legislations that govern the use of these drones. So please, remember the responsibility is yours. Be safe, be legal. Safe UAV and drone operations are a priority in this industry. It's fast growing. The number of UAVs have increased exponentially, right from toy drones to drones which are being used actively commercially today. Way back in 2014, over 1 million drones were sold worldwide. Today, we have that many. We're talking about 10 lakh being sold within the country. And remember this, the rapid influx of these drones has raised certain red flags on drone safety, right from extremely dangerous situations concerning national safety, right down to the safety of the pilot who flies those drones. Just remember this, each month there are approximately 25 reports as of now that pilots have seen drones near manned aircraft. That pilots have been told to alter course or have altered course. Richie and the rest of the gang over here are strong proponents of drone safety. We encourage UAV enthusiasts to fly carefully and responsibly by following these simple rules. These are some of the rules used abroad, internationally. Follow those by the Academy of Model Aeronautics, AUVSI. Fly no higher than 400 feet. The reason why we say that is normally normal manned aircraft fly above 500 feet, except probably on takeoff and landing or when we have helicopter operations. And in those scenarios, a helicopter will probably be able to see you, else be informed that you're operating in that area, which comes to communication, which is another point. Please remember to keep your drone well within your eyesight range at all times. Do feel free to use an observer to assist you if required. Remain clear and do not interfere with manned aircraft operations. Do not think that you can go up there and say, hide to the pilot. You're endangering the helicopter, endangering yourself. In fact, avoid other aircrafts and obstacles at all times. Do not intentionally fly over unprotected people or moving vehicles. Yes, as a new young ground pilot, you're enthusiast and you want to show off, and you probably want to fly across your friends and show them you can take pictures of them. Think before you do that. The reason why safety is involved is aviation is now over 100 years. And the information gleaned over those 100 years say that machines or man can fail. I'm sure you're not expecting a drone to fail mid-flight over your friend, but the results could be catastrophic. I do have a lot of pictures, but I choose not to share them with you. But I could tell you, there are pictures with faces torn off where they require reconstructive surgery. Hands and legs, I'm talking limbs, forever maimed. And certain cases of fatalities. So remember, do not interfere with manned aircraft. Do not fly over unprotected people or moving vehicles. Number one, you could cause a distraction on the road. Number two, you might misjudge your own operations and crash into them. So remain at least 25 to 30 feet away from anything that is vulnerable. Now, you might not have to contact the control tower or the airport while flying within your own protected area. However, if you're within 5 miles of an airport, it is expected that you do so. The reason being threefold. Number one, they know where you're flying, and should there be any manned flight operations, they can inform them of the same. Number two, they are aware that you are flying, and if you have an emergency or a fly away, meaning you've lost control with your drone, they know what to do. Number three, the radio interference that you get from your controller. Do not fly in adverse weather conditions, high winds and reduced visibility. In reduced visibility, there is a good possibility of disorientation or losing your drone. And when it comes to high winds and clouds, you might think that your drone is going forward, but the forces may be beyond the drone's operating parameters. You may be miles away from where you actually think you are. Ensure the operating environment is safe and that operators are competent and proficient. As Natalie mentioned, and as one of my colleagues, Vignesh, is also going to be telling you, remember this. You need to be proficient in using that piece of equipment, else it become as dangerous as a weapon. You need to understand how it flies. In fact, that's a very nice method that Natalie mentioned, wherein they teach you to use one stick and then the next stick and then a combination. Do not fly near or over sensitive infrastructure or properties such as power stations, water treatment facilities, correctional facilities, heavily traveled roadways, government facilities, and corporate facilities. You are endangering yourself and the safety of those over there. Do not fly under the influence of alcohol or drugs. We're not talking about somebody taking cocaine and flying a drone. We're talking about common medicine. You may feel that you are at the best of health. However, you could have sensory deprivation, which could lead to a crash or loss of link. Check and follow all your local laws and ordinances before you fly, or if you fly over private property. If flying over private property, ensure that you get permission before you do so. Do not conduct surveillance or photograph persons in areas where there is an expectation of privacy without the individual's permission. Do not fly over the roof of tall buildings with a swimming pool. You could land up in trouble with the police for invasion of privacy. And drones should not be equipped with weapons. I go so far as to say, in training, drones should not be equipped with payloads. We have seen incidents and accidents which could have been disastrous. Thanks to the grace of the one protecting us, I'd say that we're lucky that we haven't experienced any of such. However, there are a number of drones which I have seen during Diwali and probably 4th of July and at other occasions where they put firecrackers on the drones and try to launch rockets of drones. Remember, it's prohibited and dangerous at the same time. You could kill or maim somebody for life. Worse still, you could take out lives. A few guidelines for drone users, if you can tell people you'll be taking pictures or videos of them. Explain to them what is the reason that you are operating in that area. People will be a lot more accepting than seeing a foreign object in the sky. If you think someone has reasonable expectation of privacy, do not violate that privacy by taking pictures or gathering sensitive data unless you have a very valid reason. Do not fly over people's private property without their permission. Do not gather personal data for no reason and do not keep it longer than you think you have to, should you be permitted to do so. If you keep sensitive data about other people, secure it against loss or theft. Remember, the responsibility is yours. If someone asks you to delete personal data, do so unless you have a legitimate and legal valid reason not to. If anyone raises privacy, security, safety concerns, try and listen to what they have to say. As long as they are polite and reasonable about it. Try not to argue. Try to explain to people, or rather have somebody along with you who can explain to people what you're doing. It'll go a long way in preventing you from being distracted from your main task of flight operations. And do not harass animals or people with your drone. To help secure these safety policies, remember this. In general, the public are averse to risks and new ideas. So unless you explain to them what you're doing, there is definitely going to be a mood of apprehension. And to dispel this, the best way would be, prior to doing anything, involve your locality. There's nothing wrong in talking to the police, telling them what a drone is, what are you doing with it, or what do you intend doing with it. Teach them how to use a drone. They'll be more than happy to help you when the time comes when you need to use it. Recreational and occasional drone users, as well as commercial clients, must be aware of the safety risks, duties, responsibilities, and liabilities. Remember, insurance is a requirement. Remember that privacy is of utmost importance. There does exist an essential lack of awareness, and this negligence, I wouldn't say might, but I'd say could result in the possibility of complaints. Or in case of malfunctions of your drone, if people are aware of what you're doing, they could assist you in telling you where the drone is or inform you should there seem to be any malfunction that they note. Significantly more resources should be dedicated to this aspect, and I feel the public awareness campaigns are of great importance when we talk about the active integration of drones into the current dynamic aviation ecospace. I'd like to show you a quick animation. Uh, Sorry, just give me a minute. I seem to have lost our link over here. Can you see the screen?
Not yet. Yes.
Is the screen visible?
Yes.
Drone? Nice. But before you fly your cool new drone for the first time,
Is the animation
make sure you
visible?
are well
Yes.
prepared to operate your drone safely and legally. Fly safely. We know it's tempting to learn on the fly, but take the time to read your drone's operating manual, which will explain your drone's features, how to fly, and how to care for your drone. And always fly with fully charged batteries in both your drone and the control system. Before each flight, perform a mechanical check of your drone to make sure that both the flight system and the connectivity system are in good working condition. Also, know your drone's range and plan your flight accordingly. Make sure that you are complying with Canada's drone regulations and stay out of controlled airspace unless you have permission, an advanced pilot certificate, and an eligible type of drone. And always make sure that you maintain the minimum distances from airports and stay well clear of other aircraft. Know your limits. Find a flight school and take a drone safety course. You can also get involved in the drone community and benefit from the experience of others. Join a local club or find an experienced pilot to fly with. As a new pilot, you have a lot to learn, and talking to others can help. When it's time for takeoff, be smart. Start with small, slow, and lower altitude missions until you get a feel for your drone. Then you can gradually increase the altitude and complexity of operations. And avoid distractions. You are a pilot, and you are responsible for flying your drone safely. Fly respectfully. Be respectful of others' privacy, including their personal space, private property, and personal data like facial images and license plates. If there are other people around, it's a good idea to let them know what you are doing before you start flying, including if you plan to take photos or video that might capture them in the background. Know before you go. For more tips and best practices, please visit our website.
I hope that was okay.
That was perfect, Captain.
And now on with what I was presenting. Can you see what I'm presenting?
Not yet.
I'm sorry. I need to apologize. Can you see?
Yes.
So, to recap, no flying over 400 feet, no flight within 150 meters of congested area, no flights within 50 meters of property, vehicles or people or vessels. Do not fly further than 500 meters away from the operator. That's the reason is you have to maintain your visual line of sight. No person to be inside 30 meters of the takeoff and landing areas. No flight inside a kilometer of the boundary of an aerodrome without permission. That can be even toy drones. No drones weighing 7 kgs or greater to fly in controlled airspace without permission. In India, the rules are a lot more stringent. Never fly unless you are satisfied that the flight is safe to be made. Always check the weather. Check the controls of the drone. Even if a short break, check your battery power and see that your battery has sufficient power to complete whatever mission you want. Only look at the screen of the operating controls to check a battery. You should be looking at your drone 99% of the time. Know the rules, regulations, laws, your privileges and responsibilities. Fly safe, fly legally, fly responsibly. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I just close by mentioning something similar to what my last presenter mentioned. I talk about Thomas Edison over here. We do allow people to fly drones, and we teach them how not to crash, but we allow them to figure out for themselves. Now, when Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, it took him over 100 different trials with different materials. He used rope, he used hemp, he used wire, and every time it failed. Until the time came where he had put it in vacuum and where he used nichrome, and the bulb succeeded and worked. So when he was questioned, they asked him, "You have 100 failures of your bulb, and now you succeeded. What have you got to say?" He said, "No, I have 101 successes, 100 ways not to do it." And that's something you got to allow your students to learn how to do things and how not to do things. And with that, I'd like to say thank you so much once again to Ruchi, Vignesh, who's also online and coming up probably next, and Natalie, and to all of you all present who've taken the time off to be with us and to contribute to the industry in your own way. Thank you so much. Stay safe in the times of COVID. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Captain Regis, once again for being so generous with your knowledge sharing. And this really gives us a perspective about flying drones safely, definitely, wherever we are, however we are. And next we have Vignesh Santanam from World Economic Forum. Vignesh, I request you to uh, please take over and tell us about the perspectives of how the world looks like from the World Economic Forum's perspective in the emerging technology space, and what do we hope for our children 10 years down the line, and what kind of career, what kind of technology, what kind of future should our children be aspiring for?
First of all, thank you so much, Ruchi, for inviting me here, and thank you to Captain Job and Natalie for the rather eloquent presentations that have been extremely well defined. So before I move to the job, the future of work part of the discussion, there are definitely some follow-throughs that I'd like to add to some of the presentations made. So I'm not sure if many of us may recall that the Indian driving license, of course, it's now currently a smart card, but earlier in the day it used to be a booklet. And there used to be this pretty important message at the back of that booklet back in the day, which said, driving is a privilege and not a right. And that's a very loaded line, which I think we all should take extremely seriously. As of course, Captain Job has presented the areas that we should be looking at before operating not just drones but any heavy machinery. This is something that we should certainly take into cognizance. The reason for that being is that you are the custodian of machinery that can do a lot of good, but that also has a lot of risks coming along with it. So over and above some of the pointers presented around how one should operate, whom one should sort of address and inform before taking part, and how one can before taking part in a mission, and how one can set up their base securely and safely before flying. One must keep in mind that when you operate a drone or any technology, you are the custodian of that technology. So there are a lot of ancillary things also over and above purely operating. One is if you're simple thing, if you're traveling in an aircraft with a drone, how do you pack up this drone? Can it be foam coated and packed in a way that makes it as secure and as air flight proof as possible? Point one. Two is if you run out of batteries, if your batteries run their course, how do you dispose of batteries? We all know that the cause of a lot of wildfires and stray fires that have happened have been because of carelessly disposed of batteries. So when a battery is definitely disposed of, you should ensure that there is not even a little amount of charge that is left behind that can cause a lapse that can have some monumental impacts on people around. Three is, what if one is in a situation where the drone is completely broken, or one has to dispose of a drone itself that is beyond repair? What do you do? Where do you go? Given the nature of these instruments, given that they were of course born on a battlefield, and they can be misused by people who are totally off the grid, or not to declare these drones, where to whom to tell, inform your local police station that I had a drone which does not work anymore. These are the remains of it. Dispose them off as securely as possible by making sure you inform the legal frame, the legal custodians, or rather the people around you who are in charge of your jurisdiction. So these are things to look at. Four, over and above uh, over and above just the job of a drone operator, I mean, one should understand that we are of course in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution. But this is a good word to use, but how does this add value, and what does this mean for all of us? When you look at the industrial revolution that happened in the mid 20th century, we saw the rise of the assembly lines. We saw a lot of factory workers come into the fore, the mass production of materials and equipment. Here, the difference between the fourth industrial revolution and the earlier revolutions is that we're able to transcend space, we're able to transcend time. We're in a not time but space, but we're in a position where jobs that existed 15 years ago don't really exist now. Okay, to name a few, they make a living out of YouTube content creation, for example. Drone operators, as we famously say, things like SEO analysts and big data architects, Uber drivers. So these industries came up because of the rise of this fourth industrial revolution. So to the point on the future of work and the promise that these technologies have, the advice that I would give to younger students and people who are who are part of this part of the audience here today is that it is very important to go back to the drawing board. These buzzwords that we see around AI, ML, blockchain, these are fantastic technologies, but it is important to learn the basics. It's important to understand, to get to that point of having a strong sense of algorithms by improving, say, something as simple as mathematics, being mastering the whole idea of problem solving before you can come to this. So by just looking at, I would say one should not just pursue the buzzword, but understand what the means to that journey is. So it is important to have a strong sense of algorithms, a good suit in mathematics, and also learning simple codes like C++, Python, and RSpark, which are the basis to tools like these. So the fourth industrial revolution is creating jobs that are of great value to us. Okay, so even going forward, maybe 5 or 10 years from now, compounded by the COVID scenario that we're in right now, we're going to be in a situation where we look at very, very core, streamlined subject matter experts who may work remotely. So how can we invest in institutions that will empower these people. This could be the future of work maybe 5 to 10 years from now. And for that to happen, there has to be that layer of responsibility that we instill in our youth right from when we train them. So as the speakers before me mentioned, the sensitivity around uh, being custodians of this technology and using them for greater good is something that one should have a constant eye on while they pursue these vocations. So having said that, I must also tell you what we at the WEF have been doing around, specifically around drones. One is, of course, a key theme is around drones for social good. So, as many of us here are aware, the idea of delivering medicines using drones, being able to serve isolated populations in line with the rising economy of the country that we are in. It is important that we're able to provide. We're in a position where we can provide urban grade healthcare infrastructure to people in remote and isolated areas. Ruchi, you have led projects of this nature in very remote areas. You've had a very good seat in the house in terms of understanding how this works. But this comes with a lot of measured and educated decisions. So it's not about just because the job of somebody operating a drone is not about taking it from point A to B. It is about understanding the dynamics around you. You are the custodian of the situation at that point. It is important to inform stakeholders around you, bring in context from local communities, understand what their real value is, and not force fit a technology on the situation at hand. So I think when you have traditional teams, say for example in the case of say a disaster, when you have traditional mechanisms or a disaster management teams, the value that technology adds is that it provides them with information. We are in a hyper connected world right now. We have access to all levels of information, but can decisions be taken faster on the basis of information that is provided much earlier? So if you send, simple example, if you send out a drone to an area that is affected by a cyclone, how can the drone come back with info? How can drone data be sent back to base immediately so that a disaster response team can take action in a matter of minutes? So these are the values some that technologies like this bring to the table. So my simple advice to some of the younger people watching this discussion and to the industry at large is that I think Ruchi, first of all, you and your team are doing a great job by taking us to the drawing board on this. This is exactly where we should start. This is definitely where we should understand what the origins of our requirements are from, where our technologies come from, and then build on this in an educational setting like Natalie mentioned earlier. The opportunity you have for research and the opportunity to iterate is plenty. So this technology, so for IR tech, when iterated, it is very important that one comes out with a model that is safe, secure, and repeatable. So that's how I would like to close with with a quote. So Captain Job did come up with an impressive quote, but quoting Nikola Tesla. Tesla is something that we hear a lot about these days, but if I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't really work. So it is important to understand and learn from mistakes that we make. It is also important to iterate on the go, and one should be able to think on their feet when it comes to developing and pursuing technologies of that nature. So with that, I'd like to thank you, and should you have any questions, feel free to
Thank you so
connect.
much, Vignesh. So we have a question from one of the audience which asks, in the near future, can we expect the drones to travel a long distance?
Is that for me or for Captain?
You can answer that.
So isn't that the end game of drones? We yeah. So ideally, yes. The if one looked at paintings from the 20th century on how they envisioned the year 2020 or the year 2000 was with, of course, flights in the sky. So ideally, we want to be in a situation where we are able to do long distance flights, fly people, fly commodities, and try to transcend and be able to deliver all forms of cargo safely and securely. So the possibility, yes, it is an audacious goal, but it is not something that we can just jump onto. There is a process behind it. We need to assess where we stand in terms of the safety and security, the people under whom, if a drone is to fly, across districts, what is the nature of the population there? How many critical assets are in those areas that can be impacted? What are the risks that these drones are posing in the air and on the ground? And what is the worst case scenario? What happens if you lose control? What happens if these drones crash? So these are checklists that we definitely need to follow. And if we're able to crack this through pilots and through experiments and through educational institutions that are pursuing vocations such as this, yes, definitely the opportunity is there, and there is no stopping a technology whose time has come.
Thanks. So I remember the reason why I got into drones was as a kid I wanted to make flying cars, Vignesh. And the better got of me and I became a doctor. But then the desire for flying cars is still there in my heart. And sure, I mean, my child is learning this with me, and he has started aspiring for drones and for flying cars and he comes up with weird ideas when he plays with his blocks, wherein he's experimenting and he's making drones like he mixes up the blocks and he says that this is a drone which can sense the ripe fruits from the raw fruits. So he creates a block and says this is a camera which can see which is the ripe fruit and which is the raw fruit. So we'll pick up the ripe fruit and we'll big it in the basket, and this is the basket. He creates these kind of models at the age of like he did this when he was 3. Today he's 5 and he comes up with even more funny ideas. I'm very happy that we are a part of fourth industrial revolution as a maturing generation, and we are ready to hand it over to the upcoming generation. And definitely we cannot think like them because their thinking is way beyond what we could even imagine. And so here we are. And if there is any question from the audience inside the room that you would like to ask about, I don't see any more questions coming from the live audience right now. But Natalie, it's been amazing hearing you and She Maps once again. And we would really take the inspiration from you to take your ideas. You have mentored us, and we have your learning and the license to use your understanding in our schools as well. And I'm very, very, very happy to take it forward in our schools. We are completely prepared for that. And thank you, Captain Job, for once again inspiring us to be absolutely safe and secure in whatever we do and not go hanky panky with our drone jobs. Definitely, that's not deserving. And thanks, Vignesh, for saying again that we are the stakeholders, which are not just a tiny part of the ecosystem, but then when we are flying drones, we are the custodians of the whole system. So when we are flying the drones in that field, nobody else is probably watching us. So we are the ones who have to watch ourselves, and that's where the conscience lies. And I request
Repeating a takeaway from Captain Job is that I didn't know is not an answer to a situation if something goes wrong. So it's important to make sure we create a situation to avoid such a thing.
Absolutely. Natalie, I have one question for you, Radha. You have been, how many schools and children and teachers are you working with?
Oh, I wish that I could give you the answer for the whole of She Maps, because I'm just one of the many instructors that we have across the country. I'm not sure. Sorry. I personally have probably taught just in the past 2 years a couple of 100 students across Queensland and Victoria. But Karen and Paul, who do a lot of the teaching, they just last year they ran a regional roadshow. So they drove to more remote parts of Queensland, our state, and ran programs for 19 days straight. And with those programs, we have 60 kids go through every single day. So that was a huge chunk. She Maps as a whole has probably taught thousands of students over the past 3 years that they've been operating. So
how many
it's
countries
really
do you have your educators and your children in?
So they have taught programs in the US and the UK. You were part of the program that they taught in the Philippines, which had people from a number of different countries and flying labs. So we had people from Nepal and the Philippines,
Indonesia.
Pardon?
Indonesia.
Yes, we taught in Indonesia as well. And yeah, it's really wonderful. And you must have met Hamish as well, who's
Yes, of course.
the chief testing officer. And yeah, it was interesting hearing you talk about your son and just how many incredible ideas he has, because that's, I think, a really inspirational thing as well, is that SheMaps has Hamish, Karen and Paul's son, and he is able to do all of the programs and pick everything up just so quickly. And it shows how adaptive young people really are with this kind of technology. And sometimes I feel like we're all scrambling around trying to catch up with them, yeah.
So, everyone, I'll tell you about Hamish. Hamish is an 11-year-old boy. He's the chief technical officer at SheMaps, chief testing officer. So, whenever they come up with a drone or an idea or a project or a concept, they have to first get it approved from Hamish. When he approves it, then they pass it on to other children. And he's an amazing boy. So, we will be meeting Karen on the last day of our webinar series, and she'll be a part of it, and she'll be able to share her vision and her understanding of the whole thing. Thank you once again, Natalie. And before we close, I would request Varun from Electronic Sector Skills Council of India to please give his closing remarks. Varun, can you please put on your video?
Yeah. Hi. Good evening, everyone. And again, great, food for thought. Really impressed by the work which we all are doing and the vision which we all shared. And I think, yeah, we really are on right track, getting the right support and discussing with the right, people. And it's really, helping us. And we are getting into the very good gear up mode right now. And we really look forward for this long-term partnership. And of course, where we can upskill, we can give the fresh amount of training to the Indian candidates, Indian students, where they can also showcase themselves. And we already are part of a world skill competition where we are this year we are Electronic Sector Skill Council of India would be participating in six skill sets. So I really hope with this webinars series and discussing with all you people, we really can motivate Indian students and Indian industries to kind of share their thoughts, and correspondingly we can just convert them and help the candidates. So really look forward for the remaining days of the webinar series. And like Ruchi also mentioned in the initial talks, we really want this drone technology, T for drone, to be the part of the alphabet, and where people can resonate themselves, and it can be remembered for a longer period. So thank you so much, and God bless everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Varun. Thanks once again, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Thanks for watching us live as well on YouTube.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Ruchi. Thanks, Vignesh. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.